Hello, everybody, and thank you very much for joining me for another Alfred Hitchcock Presents review. Today I will be talking about Season 2, Episode 38, A Little Sleep, starring Barbara Cook as Barbie and Vic Morrow as Benny. And I have mixed feelings about this episode. On the one hand, there's some pretty creepy scenes in this episode that are pretty effective. The episode goes to some pretty dark places when you consider the era of television which this aired. Unfortunately, there's also a few problems I have with this episode. It takes quite a while to really get going, and also this is one of those episodes where the characters seem to do some pretty unbelievable things at times just to service the plot. So, kind of a mixed bag on this one for me, but definitely a somewhat interesting episode. So we start with a girl named Barbie, and I think it's fair to call her a party girl. She's also not one of the smarter Alfred Hitchcock Presents characters, which is essential to the plot. And she's at this party, and she's doing some very strange dancing. I thought it was odd anyway, kind of flirty, I guess. She also has a boyfriend named Chris, who we're introduced to at this point. She wants Chris to get her a drink, so he goes and does it. And there's also this weird scene of a guy standing on his head up against a wall. I'll just leave it at that and let you draw your own conclusions there. So Chris eventually comes back with Barbie's drink, and she's kind of flirting with this other guy, kissing him, and Chris doesn't do anything about this, which I thought was kind of weird. So Barbie decides she wants to go up to the mountains, and Chris wants to drive her there, but basically she tricks Chris into getting out of the car and ditches him, which I thought was kind of amusing. So at this point, Barbie stops off at this diner. She says she wants some coffee, but really this is just a reason to further the plot along. She learns this that there's this man named Benny who's on the run for supposedly killing a girl and an animal, which I thought was disturbing. It turns out that she also meets this other strange guy in the diner. It seems like everybody's a little bit off in some way or another in this episode. So it turns out that she learns that the man who runs the diner, his name is Ed, is the brother of Benny, and that they're kind of working together to hide Benny, as we'll find out later on in the episode. So Barbie still, for some reason, thinks it's a good idea to go to this cabin, knowing that this dangerous guy is on the loose. Okay, whatever. And so when she gets up to the cabin, she runs into this guy who she doesn't know, and right away, putting two and two together, I could guess that this was Benny. It's pretty obvious, even though the episode tries to hide it for a few minutes. So they give each other these strange looks. I thought this was very odd, and they chat. And Barbie starts dancing around again like she did at the beginning of the episode. Why, I have no idea, just to flirt with this guy, I guess. So eventually this man is dancing with her, and he tells her who he is, that he is Benny. So at this point, Barbie is finally concerned, and he explains what he did to the dog, but he seems unsure that anything happened to this woman. I think her name is Marcella. He acts like she comes by to see him and that she's coming again. So this was a little bit strange. So at this point, Ed comes by, the guy from the diner and Benny's brother, and he basically wants to let Barbie in on this. He wants her to drive him and Ed to this other place where Benny will be safe, so he's covering for him. So at this point, Barbie comes on to Ed. I have no idea why. This was very, very strange. So at this point, it turns out that it looks like Ed might have been the killer. At least Barbie thinks so, and that he's letting Benny take the rap for it, which I thought would have been an interesting twist, but more on that in a minute. So basically, at this time, Benny comes back, and Barbie reveals everything that Ed did. Benny acts like he has no idea what's going on. I thought this scene was slightly confusing the way it was handled and not all that convincing. This so-called twist didn't really work for me at this point. So Ed and Benny fight. Ed gets shot. Benny, is now with Barbie. Barbie thinks she's safe. But it turns out, of course, that Benny was the real killer all along, which is pretty obvious. But I will admit it's kind of creepy when he attacks Barbie and now she is a goner. So this episode is pretty entertaining. The performance by Barbara Cook in the lead is really, really good. And I do somewhat admire some of the dark places this episode goes to for the time it was made. Unfortunately, from a modern perspective, some of the decisions the characters make don't make a lot of sense. and I didn't think the twist at the end was really that convincing. I pretty much figured that Benny was behind this the whole time. So overall, a very mixed bag and an uneven episode for me, and I'm going to give A Little Sleep a 2.5 out of 5. I do think, though, that fans of the series will find this episode interesting. For some of the twists and turns that it tries to take, I just personally didn't think they were all successful. But still an interesting episode. So 2.5 out of 5 for A Little Sleep. And as always, thank you very much for watching.